Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, I thought this video was going to be one thing, and it's turned out it's going to be something else. And that's only because the initial reports were suggesting that the NHS Lothian was going to repay £40 million in reparations to alleged slavery issues. And I thought, what? They haven't got £40 million. And if they have, then that's the end of it. You don't have to ever worry about funding for the NHS ever again if they've got that kind of money lying around, you know. But it turns out that they're not going to be giving them £40 million. But they are going to do what they call a programme of reparations. So they're going to raise issues. They're going to sort of highlight this and do that. But that still means that time, effort, personnel and resources are going to be spent on this salving of some supposed emotional guilt. Well, all this was a long time ago. It was nearly 300 years ago. And I'm going to suggest that we don't have anything to be sorry about. We'll go in and have a look at the story, and then I'll tell you why I don't think that we need to worry about anything, and we can tell them don't bother. Probably going to be a bit divisive, but bear with me while I explain where I'm coming from, and so you'll hopefully understand why I think, first of all, thankfully we're not giving a single penny to this, but also the fact that actually, if we start doing that, who's going to pay us? Can we have our money? It's a very complex thing. Anyway, we'll go in and have a look, see what they're going to do, but don't worry, they're not paying £40 million, but they are still going to be wasting time, effort and money on it. Anyway, here goes. So, eyebrows raised as Scotland's second biggest health board is to apologise for historical slavery links amid NHS crisis. Yeah, I mean, you can't get an operation, you can't see a doctor, the waiting lists are forever, your cancer treatment is falling apart, but hey, we'll take a couple of people over here, put some money into it and go, hey look, hundreds of years ago we benefited from some shit that was happening. Well, tough. Really tough. NHS Lothian is set to begin a programme of reparations, which includes an apology for alleged historical slavery links after a report found that the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh used to own a plantation in Jamaica. Many people did. One of Scotland's biggest health boards is set to begin a programme of reparations, which includes an apology for these alleged links. NHS Lothian rubber-stamped these plans following a board meeting on Thursday as woke wankery officials look to make amends. How can they possibly make amends? How can they possibly make amends? They aren't the ones that did this. It was 300 years ago. They're not even genetically linked to these people who did this. The people who were affected died hundreds of years ago. Chances are their offspring probably don't even exist anymore. And if they do, you'd be hard pushed to find the link down. Who are you giving the money to? Complete strangers? Who is going to say, well, that's okay, it's public money we're spending on it? Who's asked the public if they want this money spent on it? I mean, these are serious questions. These are money that's gone in from the taxpayers into the health service for a reason. Health service, not salve your guilt service because you're a bunch of woke wankers. You know, who's signing off on this? Anyway, but the focus on this, when A&E and cancer waiting times, that I just mentioned, are almost at record highs throughout Scotland, it has been questioned by critics who say it may raise eyebrows of those waiting for treatment. I think it will raise anger in those waiting for treatment. A report found that the hospital had made almost £40 million from slavery. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Including through ownership of small Caribbean plantation, which was left it in a surgeon's will in 1750. It didn't make £40 million. What they're saying is it made some money, which if you bring up to today's rate is £40 million. But that's not £40 million. So let's just pay them what it was back then when we had it. The health board said it would provide non-financial reparations to Jamaica and Africa in a bid to make amends for these links. Okay, let's deal with this. It said a plantation with 39 people of African descent provided considerable wealth for the hospital in the 18th century. Okay, first of all, let's address a couple of issues. Number one, Who invented slavery? Was it white people? No. So if slavery exists and anyone needs to actually pay for this slavery issue, it should be black people. They invented it. And certainly there were slaves in ancient Egypt 7,500 years ago. There were slaves in Egypt before we had a culture in this country. So, what's going on? We didn't invent slavery. And who were massively beneficial from slaves? Arabs, because it was the Arab slave traders. And in fact, if you actually look at the history of slavery, it was black people enslaving other black people and then selling them to the Arabs. That's where all the money was. And then they were shipped off to America and the Americas and the New World. Incidentally, and people don't know this, who was the first slave owner in America? It was a black man. It was a black slave owner was the first man to own slaves in America. And here was the thing. When you got a slave, you owned him for 7 years. That was the period of indenture. And the plan was you got them for 7 years, and at the end of 7 years they were free. And this man went to court to say, no, they're slaves for life. And who was this man? It was the same guy. It was the black slave owner. Went to the court to say, no, if I've paid for my slave, I want my slave for life. There you go. Beat that. So let's not kid ourselves that it was white people who invented slavery or benefited from slavery. Far from it. We benefited far less than the Africans did, because they were doing it for so much longer. And so if you want to send a bill to anyone, send it to Africa. That's number one. Number two, I don't see any Arab countries paying their bills either. Anyway, number two, send a bill to the Romans. Send it to Italy, because the Romans enslaved us. How about the white slavers from the Barbary pirates? Let's send them a bill. Let's send a bill to Norway because of all the Vikings come over here enslaving Britain. Let's do all that. Let's send them all a bill as well. Because, they need to salve their guilt, and I want some money. I want some money because somebody, a long time ago might have been enslaved by somebody from Italy. Where's my money? That's the stupidity of what these people are doing. But they want to go, oh yes, but I'm white and I've got this guilt about being white. No, you haven't. And I'll tell you why you haven't got a guilt about being white. Because as I say, this existed for thousands of years. Until one tiny, tiny little country said, no, we won't do it anymore. And they basically went to war several times, expended a great deal of money and effort and lives of their fighting soldiers, marines and sailors to put an end to the trade. That country, of course, was Britain. And so far from having any guilt, one should look to Britain to say, thanks Britain, thanks for ending the slave trade that the Africans started thousands of years ago, and that it took one tiny country up in the north of Europe to say no and we won't do it anymore. Well done, Britain. And that's why we don't have any guilt. Yes, we use slaves, but that's because everyone did. And then we used them for about 150 years. And even from the beginning, it was seemed a bit odd, and we never had slavery in this country. And it was really the only slaves Britain had were in the Caribbean. And that's how it was. And the plantations of the east coast of America. And almost immediately we didn't like it. I mean, it was pernicious. And there was almost immediately the fight began to end it. And of course, we did. So we owe nothing. We need to actually send them a bill. Let's send Jamaica the bill for the men and equipment we lost, making sure they were free. And then let's send a bill to the hospital to say, look, this is how much we're owed as a nation. If you want to salve your guilt, pay the bill for all those lives lost. Don't pay the bill for the slaves. The other thing is, of course, you could always do what the Americans planned to do, which was to get all the slaves, all the black people in America, back on the boats and send them back to Africa. That is why Liberia exists. President Monroe The capital of Liberia is Monrovia. He created Liberia, liberty and all that. His plan was to put all the black people in America back to Africa into this country called Liberia, and where they would be free. And you know who signed off on that? Abraham Lincoln. Seen now as the most virtuous of American presidents. He was signing up to send them all back where they came from. That was the American plan. So let's not have any of this bullshit argument that we have guilt. We really don't. We didn't invent it. We didn't really profit from it, because it was the blacks and the Arabs who were profiting from it, and you don't see them putting their hand in their pocket to pay the slaves over in America. And we were the country that stopped it. Well, almost, because the Arabs still have slaves. One only has to look at the last World Cup to see how that worked, how they were building that. They were coming in, they were below minimum wage, they were taking their passports off them. They weren't allowed to leave until they'd finished. We all know where the real slavers are, and it isn't us. So tell these guys up in the hospital to go boil their head, because it's got nothing to do with us. And we, the British, don't have to pay anything. We've paid already. I'm coming up. Now, we have a crisis in the NHS all across the Great Britain. The whole of Britain's got this crisis, but Scotland's particularly bad. And they're thinking, let's take some resources out of this hospital. Let's take time and effort and staff away from actually doing the job they're supposed to do, however badly they're doing it. And let's waste it doing this because some little lefty tosspot on the board of governors thinks, oh, my ancestors were so bad. Fire whoever voted for this. It's public money, not their money. If they feel bad and they want to do it, tell them to sell their house and hand the money over. But it's public money, not their money. They should not be doing it. The people don't pay their taxes for that. They pay their taxes so they can get a hospital service when they need one. And these people can't even deliver that. But hey, they can go and cry over events that happened 300 years ago to people they don't know, by people they don't know, and they don't know the full story because they're ignorant and stupid and they don't understand who did what to whom. Tossers, one and all. Anyway, I'm going to finish there. Thank you very much for watching. I know this is divisive, but do give me some comments there. I'd like to know what your views are. Very interesting one, I think. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.